Good afternoon, everybody. Coming to you live from the ATL. It's ATL Prime Sports. I'm Todd Porter with my sidekick, JJ. Today's guest is a special one. It's Hugh Douglas, who played 10 years in the National Football League with the New York Jets, Philadelphia Eagles, and Jacksonville Jaguars. Today, Hugh is one half of the John and Hugh Morning Show here on 92.9 The Game in Atlanta. Hugh, welcome to ATL Prime Sports with TC and JJ.
Hey, thanks for having me, fellas. How you guys holding up in this pandemic right now?
Wishing there was some live sports, Hugh. Wishing there was some live sports.
You're not the only one, man. I tell you, it's been kind of rough. You know what I mean? It's just been rough.
I agree with JJ. It's been rough. He's watching that Korean baseball league.
Baseball.
I watched a couple of plays, but I can't do it.
You know what's funny? John was watching it. John was watching that a little bit. He kind of liked it, though. He got into it. He was kind of poo-pooing it at first, but then he got into it. He kind of likes it now.
Hey, when you're desperate, you'll watch anything.
Yeah, basically. That's how it usually goes.
All right. Well, Hugh, let's start the interview off by going right into it. When did you start playing football, and who influenced you the most in your career?
Well, I started playing like in 90. I played my junior year in high school, and I remember Ralph Rawls, that was his name. He basically said I had an opportunity. I could probably play at the next level. He said, well, first and foremost, it was play at college, and try to go to school. Didn't have a whole lot of offers, and he told me about Central State, and he said they played some good football there at Central State. And that's kind of how I ended up there. Coach Billy Joe was coaching. He told me about Coach Billy Joe coaching and how they played some good football and how they were national champions a few years ago, and how it would probably be a good fit for me.
You're listening to Hugh. Go ahead, Hugh.
No, I'm sorry. JJ, I'm sorry. You're listening to Hugh Douglas here on ATL Prime Sports. Hugh, when you got to Central State, college life was an adjustment for you. Your dad gave you a wake-up call. Tell us what that wake-up call was and what it was like.
Oh, yeah, man, I tell you, I left school because college was a little different. Being away from home, that was the first time I ever been away from home. So it was a little different. And I came back home. I left. I snuck out. During training camp, and I came back home. And when I came home, I'm thinking that everything's going to be peachy keen. I'm back home. And my father told me, he said, listen, you can't stay here. You have to get a job. You have to do something. You can't stay here. So when he said that, I was a little, taken aback by that. And by the time when he was saying all that, Coach Billy Joe called and was like, hey, you need to come back to school. So it was either get kicked out the house or go back to school and try to make something of myself. So it was at that point, it was an easy choice, to be honest.
You're listening to Hugh Douglas right here on ATL Prime Sports, one half of the John and Hugh Morning Show right here on 92.9 The Game here in Atlanta. Hugh, wonderful career at Central State. It led to a HBCU Hall of Fame induction. What did that induction mean to you?
Man, it was one of the best feelings in the world. Playing, like just being there the day that it happened and seeing all of that, like the excellence that came from HBCUs, all the Hall of Famers and everything like that. You're talking about like guys like Shannon Sharp, Michael Strahan, Jerry Rice, Ed Too Tall Jones, guys like that. Just being in the same room with these guys, it was very, very humbling. Very, very humbling to know that we all came from the same beginnings, the small schools, really small schools, and for those guys to make it to the Hall of Fame, man, that was something special for me.
You're listening to Hugh Douglas here on ATL Prime Sports. Hugh, your Central State career obviously was absolutely tremendous. You were a two-time NAIA Division I national champion. You were a national champion, excuse me. You were a two-time NAIA Division I All-American. Apologize for that. You had 42 sacks in 32 career games, 13 multiple sacks, and you won the NAIA National Championship as a sophomore. As a senior, you were named Defensive Player of the Year. Tell us all about that. What was that like? And did they ever double team you, for goodness sakes?
Man, listen, I got double teamed so much when I was in college that that's basically what I knew. I knew that every game. I knew going against players every game that was going to be the case. And I kind of like that. I kind of like the fact that Coach Billy Joe allowed me to play. We played the type of defense that allowed me to get to the quarterback, and that's all I really had to do. That was my only responsibility, was just rushing the passer. And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it tremendously. As far as playing that year, that senior year, just had a singular mission. Had started to hear scouts talk about maybe I could go to the next level. And I just wanted to be, whatever happened, I just wanted to be prepared. So I trained hard, I worked hard, and every game that I played, I tried to dominate. That was the game plan.
Hugh, you were a first-round draft pick. What was the jump for the to the pros like for you, being at a smaller school to the absolute highest level in the world?
It was bananas. I remember going to training camp, and the first couple of days I was there, just going against guys from bigger schools and being in that atmosphere. And I remember the first couple of days that I was there, like they were just looking at me funny, like I didn't belong. That was the one thing that I remember vividly, was going against guys that went to USC and Cal and schools like that. And they're looking at me and I know the running joke was, where's Central State? Who did you play against? Or, things like that. So every day I had to basically earn my stripes. I had to earn my stripes the first day that I came to New York, going to the big city and people not really knowing who I was. I had to earn my stripes every day.
Well, you were drafted in the first round of the 1995 draft by the Jets, 16th overall. That's such a difference from where you played at Central State. You became the NFL Defensive Rookie of the Year. What are your thoughts about that, Ward? And at that point, did you think, I made it?
It's funny. When I got it, I didn't know. Like, I think it's a bigger deal now, or it feels like it's a bigger deal now than actually when it was when I received the award. You talk about with the NFL honors and everything like that. I just, I looked at it as it was cool. It was pretty cool. It was pretty cool to come from a small school and look at everybody that had got drafted that year. And I was the one. You talk about in a draft with some Hall of Famers, and I was the one that got Defensive Rookie of the Year. I was pretty proud of myself with that because, coming from a small school and people not really knowing if I could cut it at this level, I was really humbled by that award.
You're listening to Hugh Douglas right here on a special edition of ATL Prime Sports on a Tuesday afternoon. Hugh, you were accustomed to winning a whole lot in college. Your first year in the NFL, only 3 wins. What was it like adjusting to the struggles of the NFL versus being a absolute winner in college?
It was tough. The scrutiny of the media, everything like that was a little tough to deal with because, you're looking in the papers and people are talking about how terrible you were. But the good thing about it, if there is such a good thing about, having a 3-13 season and then going to a 1-15 season, is that we were in New York and we were not the main story. You had the Mets up there when baseball season came around. You had the Yankees. You had the Knicks that were pretty decent around that time. So it wasn't like you got the brunt of the ridicule when you were there because there were so many other teams that were playing. There was a lot going on in New York at that time.
That had to help.
Yeah, it helped out. I'm telling you, it helped out tremendously.
In 1996, you mentioned the 1-15, but you did have a highlight in 1996, excuse me. Tell us about your only touchdown in your NFL career.
Man, that was funny. Like, I ran like 60-something yards. I forgot I think it was a fumble. And I just happened to scoop it up. And I just happened to scoop it up. And I started rumbling, bumbling, and stumbling. And I remember running into the end zone, and I was so tired. I didn't have a dance or anything. And the only thing I can remember is I had to go right back on defense and play defense after that play. Boy, that was tough. That was.
Who was that against? We couldn't find that out.
I think it was the Miami Dolphins. If I'm not mistaken. I think it was the Miami Dolphins. Was
that a home game or away?
I think it was a home game.
Okay.
It was definitely a home game.
The Dolphins in 96 on a 64-yard fumble return. then you got to go out and play defense, man. That's really not fair. They should have just let you rest for a minute, right?
Yeah, but being a young guy on the squad now, that no rest for me. I was too young for that. And they used to tell me all the time, "Rook, get up, you're too young for all this." Yeah, so no rest at all.
Your career is one of a kind. You got to play for Bill Parcells and Andy Reid. I think Bill Parcells already in the Hall. I think Andy Reid will probably be there after winning the latest Super Bowl. What was that like? How are they alike, and how are they different in their coaching styles?
I think Andy Reid was more personable. As a matter of fact, I know he was more personable. Bill Parcells had his way of coaching. It was coaching basically through fear. A lot of guys were afraid of him, and he had a way of coaching where he knew how to push the buttons to get the most out of people. Sometimes it was in a good way, or sometimes it was in a bad way. But the one thing that I remember about him when I got traded was me and him really didn't get along because our personalities did not mesh. But I remember him telling me, just try to be. And for a long time, when he just said it, just like that, just try to be. And for a long time, I didn't realize what he was trying to tell me. And basically what he was trying to say is stop being an individual. Stop trying to be an individual. You got to be a team player. Mm-hmm. And that was the one thing that I learned. And being with Coach Reid, he kind of exemplified that. You have to be a team player, and you have to be held accountable for some of the actions that you have on the field. And you got to step your game up when your teammates need you. So that's the basic thing that I learned from Coach Reid.
You're listening to Hugh Douglas here on ATL Prime Sports with PC and JJ. 96, you mentioned it, 1-15. You go to the Jets in 97 from 1-15 to 9-7. You played for Richie Kotite. Then now you go to Parcells. How big of adjustment was that?
It was a huge adjustment, man, because Coach Parcells, coming from the Giants, Bill Belichick was there. They had a philosophy. And that's when you knew that, like, no disrespect to Coach Kotite, but it was a different regime with Coach Parcells. Coach Parcells came in with a game plan, and he talked a lot about, different scenarios. And the one thing that I remember is how he used to always say, teams that make the least amount of mistakes have the best chance of winning football games. Your chances go up tremendously when you go out there and you play and you don't make mistakes. And he had a whole stat sheet of different scenarios and different philosophies that, in certain situations, how you give yourself a better chance of winning if you do this and that and things of that nature. And that's what I remember about him. And every game that we ever played in, we knew everything that you could possibly know about every tendency about every team that you were playing against. He had it broken down to how many plays they ran in this scenario or that scenario. It was like he was very, very meticulous about the way that he went about a game plan.
You're listening to Hugh Douglas right here on ATL Prime Sports. Hugh, as an Eagle, you're a 3-time Pro Bowler, 2-time All-Pro. Is it safe to say that playing in Philly was the best time of your career?
Oh, yeah, definitely, man. The Philly fans are some of the best fans in the world. I had a ball playing in Philly, lived there for a while. Love the city of Philadelphia.
Hugh, in 1998, you were traded to the Philadelphia Eagles, who went 3-13 your first season. Meanwhile, the Jets go 12-4. They go to the AFC Championship game. Are you thinking, did you just feel snake bitten that you were just, about being on a winning team that just wasn't going to happen to you in your career?
You know what's funny? That didn't bother me as much as the year that I left Philadelphia going to Jacksonville and the Eagles went to the NFC Championship game and lost to the Carolina Panthers. That one, like when the Jets did it, that didn't bother me as much as it did when the Eagles went. Now that
Why is that? Why is that?
It just did that. That one, like, I love playing in New York, but it just felt like, for me personally, I was a big kid I was a small town kid in the big city. So I never felt like I really fit in to New York. But when I went to Philadelphia, it felt like I was at home. It was kind of like being in Ohio, just with more to do. So that one hurt a little bit more. And being that I spent most of my time in Philadelphia, that's why it stung a little bit. That stung right there when they did it.
I can imagine. Hugh, big fan here of your career, man. Tell me your welcome to the NFL moment.
Welcome to the NFL moment. I would have to say it was the first game of the season. playing against the Miami Dolphins, Dan Marino, and just out there, I had the best seat in the house as far as watching the game because Dan Marino, he surgically took our defense apart, and I remember sitting out there on the field and just watching him play, and that was my welcome to the NFL moment because I was just like, wow, Dan Marino, like he's a beast, like
That's
just
awesome.
Hall of Fame quarterback, just like the best, one of the best.
That's unbelievable. Yeah, I loved watching Dan Marino play. That was me. That was the golden days of the NFL.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Hugh,
He was the best.
I'm sorry, Hugh. I was going to say we'll go from Dan Marino, who stays in the pocket, to a quarterback here who played for the Falcons that did not stay in the pocket. You must have needed extra oxygen chasing this man around, Mike Vick, number 7. I know you beat him in the playoffs. That had to feel good. But, wow, what was the difference there, huh?
I tell you, Michael Vick was a special kind of player, man. Michael Vick was one of those guys that, you look at him and you just wonder what could have been if he would have played, say, 12 years, 15 years. What kind of stats would he have put up? And if he'd have been in the league that long, and just been in Atlanta that long. I know he played a long time, but I'm just saying without all the other stuff that came along with that. So he was a phenomenal player, man. No question about it. Was one of the fastest guys that I've ever seen on a football field, without a doubt. Without a doubt, one of the fastest guys I've ever seen on a football field.
It's unbelievable. You listen to Hugh Douglas right here on ATL Prime Sports. Hugh, what was it like playing with Mr. Dawkins there, one of the best of all time?
It's funny. I was talking about Doc the other day. Brian Dawkins was a guy that, didn't say a whole lot when we were at in the locker room or anything like that. Moved like an old man, always talked a little slow, just was real cautious in what he said. But when he put that helmet on, he was a different player. He was definitely a different player, man. Tremendous amount of respect for Brian and what he brought to the game. It was just a special player, man. We used to call him Weapon X. Was a special player.
One of my favorites of all time. Loved watching Brian Dawkins play.
Oh yeah, he's the beast, no question.
Hugh, during your career, in 2000s, it started to totally turn around for you. We mentioned the 3 times Pro Bowl from 2000 2002. 2-time first team All-Pro from 2000 to 2002. That's got to be the best time you had in your career because of the winning. But also, did you really enjoy what did Andy Reid mean to you as a coach also? Because he was your coach during those great times. What did all that mean to you?
Man, it was special because Andy came in right after Ray Rose. Me and Ray Rose had a special relationship because Ray was the one that traded for me out of New York. So I was with Ray for a year, and then there was a coaching change. Didn't know a whole lot about Eddie Reed. Knew that he was the quarterbacks coach for the Green Bay Packers at the time. So really didn't know a whole lot about Coach Reed, and so really didn't have a good feel for him. But when he came there, I remember him being at practice one day, and we were griping because we didn't know what to expect as far as the practice was concerned. I remember griping one day about how practice was and things of that nature. And I remember Andy telling me to quit complaining because we're getting better. And I knew then that he was serious, and he had a philosophy or a template on how he wanted us to work. Championship games and the city of Philadelphia is like rocking and everything. It was a great time, man. And that was all because of Eddie Reed. That was all because of Coach Reed. And that was like his first head coaching job too. That was his first head coaching job in the NFL. So for him to have that kind of success and us to be a part of that, that was pretty special.
Hugh, we talked about the touchdown. Looks like you had a little bit of hands too. You had an interception. Tell us about your lone interception in your career.
Man, listen, that was pure luck. I remember Jim Johnson, rest in peace. That was our defensive coordinator. We used to run these fire zones, and sometimes, the defensive end used to have to drop back into coverage. And I remember I used to hate dropping in coverage because that was taken away from me getting after the quarterback because that's all I really wanted to do. And I remember the one time we were playing the Atlanta Falcons, and I dropped back into coverage, and Chris Chandler just threw it right to me, and like it was like instinct. I just grabbed the ball. It looked like I knew what I was doing, but I really didn't. I just got lucky. I'm telling you, because That was the first time I ever called a pass in a game. Last time I ever called a pass in a game, and it just looked like I knew what I was doing. It just worked out in my favor that time.
Were you covering anybody on the play? Were you covering maybe Jam Anderson?
No, I was just dropping. I was just dropping back in the zone. It was a fire zone, so I was just dropping back in the zone.
And Chris Chandler was a really good quarterback. He didn't make a lot of mistakes. I mean, for you to intercept him, hey, you can take that for the rest of your life. That's good stuff. That's a good story.
I definitely did not expect to get that, and I'm pretty sure when he threw it, he didn't expect me to get it either.
That's a good story. Hugh, you had 80 career sacks. Does any of them stand out as more memorable than the others?
Not really. It was one of those things where I wish I could have got 100, but a couple years in there where I got banged up a little bit, didn't do that. Last year, the last couple years in the NFL, started to slow down a little bit. None more memorable than any other. The ones that I remember the most are the first three, and that was against the Jacksonville Jaguars of Mark Brunell. Being in New York, I think it was like the second or third game of the season, and not really sure about whether or not I could play at this level, and to have 3 in one game, that kind of, set me on my trajectory. And that's when the game really started to slow down for me, because I started to feel like I could play at this level. That's what I remember. Those are the ones that I remember because they were the first ones. And then after that, it just became, second nature. The game slowed down and I understood better on how to watch film and all the other stuff.
You're listening to Hugh Douglas here on ATL Prime Sports. He's with 92.9 The Game, part of the John and Hugh show every morning on 92.9 The Game here in Atlanta. Hugh, who's the best player that you played with? Is it Donovan McNabb? Who is it?
I would have to say Brian Dawkins. Donovan McNabb was a hell of a player, hell of a quarterback. Donovan McNabb kept us in a lot of football games when he got there. He was a phenomenal player when he was with the Philadelphia Eagles. But I would have to say Brian Dawkins because I was almost there for the beginning. Like, I think Dawk was in his third season when I got to the Philadelphia Eagles, and just to watch him grow and mature into the player that he became, the Hall of Famer that he became, I would have to say him, man. Played with a lot of great players on that team, but that's the one that really sticks out because of all the accolades he's gotten over the past few years. Troy Vincent was another great player. Bobby Taylor, Al Harris, played with some great guys when I played with the Philadelphia Eagles.
Hugh, I want to ask you, what do you think your best game ever in the NFL was? Do you have one that sticks out in your head?
Not really. Not nothing that sticks out like more so than any other. I would probably say I can't remember the year, but we were playing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I think it was our first win in the playoffs in a long time for the Philadelphia Eagles. And I remember getting a blindside sack of Sean King. I remember.
Hugh, you went to the Super Bowl. Did you get to play in the game? Did you play in the game as a reserve? Because it seemed like your career.
Yeah, I tore my rotator cuff the first game of the season, my first game back in Philadelphia. And I didn't want to sit out. I didn't want to sit out the season. So I just ended up playing. I stuck it out. I didn't get the surgery done. And because I wanted to be a part of that, because I had a feeling the season was going to be pretty special. So I decided I elected not to have surgery.
Wow. And what was that like, being in that atmosphere in the Super Bowl, because you faced Tom Brady in New England, and yet the team was so close to winning it? The ultimate high to the ultimate low, correct?
Yeah, man, I tell you, it's nothing like playing in the Super Bowl, being the only one or two teams that's playing on the weekend. That was phenomenal. And just being in that atmosphere and being a part of that team, and me and those guys, even though we didn't win it, we're going to walk together forever, and that's a memory that nobody could ever take from us. They always say there's no losers in the Super Bowl. That's not true. We lost. But the memories that you have, those are memories you take with yourself forever. You'll take the memories with you forever.
You're listening to Hugh Douglas right here on ATL Prime Sports. Hugh, let's jump into your broadcasting career here to kind of get towards the end of this thing. Where did you start? I know you worked with ESPN for a little bit. Tell us when you finished your NFL, how did you get into broadcasting?
You know, it's a funny story. The PR guy for the Philadelphia Eagles at the time, Derek Boyko, he was telling me, like, it was during the time where we're in Philadelphia. Howard Eskin was one of the midday hosts at the radio station. Something happened with Howard Eskin. He got in trouble for something, so he got suspended for a couple of days. So Derek Boyko, the PR guy for the Eagles, asked me to go in and fill in for Howard one day. He just said, "Hey man, go fill in for Howard." They asked, could somebody fill in, and I asked him, "Would you do it?" So I was like, "Okay, no problem." So I filled in that day, and did a shift. And right after the shift, the program director said, "Hey, would you like to do this?" And I was like, "Well, I'm kind of playing football." And he was like, "Well, listen," he said, "whenever you retire, if you ever want to do this, you got a job here in Philadelphia."
Wow.
So yeah, and so I retired. After I retired, he called me. Howard Eskin called me and was like, "Hey, if you're willing to move back to Philadelphia, we'll give you a job." And I was like, "Fine, I got nothing else to do." So okay, fine. And that's kind of how it started.
Hugh, in January 2011, I was stunned when I read this. You were made co-host of Six Nation Championship Rugby Show on BBC America. You had a really good guest appearance. Did you ever think in your broadcasting career, when you were taping segments, that you would interview zookeepers and took an Irish step dancing lesson? Tell me all about that.
None of that, man. I mean, I had fun doing all of that. Just getting out of the comfort zone a little bit, doing something a little different, and doing the Irish step dancing at the Irish Day Parade in New York City with all the kids. That was a great time. That was a real great time, man. And had loved the opportunity that I had a chance to learn how to do some of the little dance steps and everything like that. And it was just fun. Got outside of football a little bit to do something a little different.
Well, I tell you what, that's really different. There's no question about it. And now you come full circle here. You're at 92.9 The Game. You're on the morning show with John. What is it like to work with John on the morning show on 92.9 The Game here in town?
You know what? John's a good guy. John's a little different. John's a diehard Falcons fan, diehard Braves fan, and John has a lot of history. John's been around a long time. John knows a lot about sports. John worked at CNN for a long time. John's had a lot of jobs in sports, so he's a wealth of knowledge when it comes to things like that. So working with John, it's like you're learning something new every day. You're learning something new about him every day, and John is a good dude. And sometimes I got to get John out of his comfort zone though, because John can he's really straight laced, and I try to get John to loosen up a little bit. And when I do, that's when we really have fun. We get loose John free.
Well, I tell you what, Hugh, do you need him a little? Do you give him a little business, the little needle there, a little pizzazz when the Eagles? Do you remind them that your club beat the Falcons in the playoffs?
No, you know what? I never do, because I work here in Atlanta, so I gotta be quiet when the Eagles come to town. I don't root. I've been here long enough so that out of respect for the fan base here, I don't root for anybody. I'm just neutral. I'm Switzerland when it comes to that.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Now,
I just kind of keep it. Yeah, I kind of keep it. I just kind of keep it to myself. I root quietly. I quietly root.
There's nothing wrong with that. You're from Mansfield, Ohio. I'm from Michigan. I grew up a Michigan football fan, watching Bo Schembechler. Are you an Ohio State guy? What are you in college besides Central State?
You know what's funny? I was a Michigan guy. I'm not gonna lie. Even though Ohio State is the squad, I was a Bo Schembechler fan. I was a big Bo Schembechler fan back in the day, and I just like those helmets. I was a big fan of the helmet. So yeah, I was definitely a Michigan fan. If I would have had the choice to go to Michigan or Ohio State, I would have definitely been Michigan.
Oh, that's just music to my ears. That is awesome. Hugh, thank you so much for being on our show. You're welcome back anytime. We'll talk some Falcons football. Maybe we can bring John on, and if you get a chance, you can follow me and the show on Twitter and JJ on Twitter, and we'll try to get all of us. Together.
Definitely, we can do that. That'd be fun.
It would be. And Stephanie will be with us too. You guys can, talk to her too. That'll be nice. She's all lonely now, doing the ATL traffic from the house. So
yeah, we're all stuck in the house. So yeah, that's what everybody's doing right now. It's just, we're just trying to flatten the curve and just get past all of this. Just can't wait till all of this goes away.
I can't wait for it neither. I'm supposed to broadcast SIAC football in the fall with Full Sports, also bringing another conference on, the Gulf South Conference, and Sam Crenshaw does some of them games. I'll be doing them. I can't wait to the fall. I hope we have a football season. Do you think we'll have a college and NFL season? Last question.
Yeah, I think we will. I'm holding out hope, man, because it's too much money involved. And if we don't, it'll be a catastrophe if we do not have sports in this fall. It'll be a catastrophe.
Yeah, I agree. I think financially for these athletics and these school athletic departments to survive, football is the bread and butter for all the sports. So the other sports can survive. I think we'll have football too, and I'm hoping we have it at the high school level, the college level, and professional level. Sir, JJ, and I want to thank you very much for coming on ATL Prime Sports. Best of luck with you at 92.9 The Game, and we'll be talking to you down the road soon.
Thank you very much. You guys have a great time and stay safe.
You too. Thank you, sir. That was Hugh Douglas.
Not a problem.
That was Hugh Douglas, 10 years in the National Football League with the New York Jets, Philadelphia Eagles, and Jackson Jaguars. And he also is one half of the morning show, John and Hugh, on 92.9 The Game here in Atlanta. Check them out in the mornings. Hugh always makes me laugh. John is the more serious and structured one, but Hugh makes me laugh. He brings a player's perspective. Perspective when you want to hear one. And I think that's tremendous. Tomorrow on ATL Prime Sports at 8 to 9:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we'll have Dave Cohen as a guest at 8:10, and then John Morgo at 8:30. Dave is the voice of the Georgia State Panthers men's football, basketball, and baseball. John has done play-by-play for women's basketball for Georgia State. He is also a play-by-play announcer for Reinhardt football here in Metro Atlanta. Till then, for JJ, myself, Stephanie, Mark, and Brett back in San Francisco, thank you, everybody, for listening, and have a great day.